Hey, I'm Taylor Moore, and you should be watching The Crew Review.
Gentlemen,
Yes.
let's welcome Mr. Taylor Moore onto the Crew Review.
Look who's in the house.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
So Downrange is one hell of a debut, and it's already got the early buzz to drive that home.
Mm-hmm.
But can you give our audience a little bit of what to expect?
Yeah, so Downrange it's a little bit different than maybe some of what's out there. It's kind of a modern Western mixed with an operator style thriller. My protagonist is Garrett Cole, an undercover DEA agent who starts his adventure in Afghanistan, but quickly finds himself in a situation where he needs to get out of there very fast, and he does, and ends up going back home to his ranch in the Texas Panhandle, where I live currently. And I spent a lot of time, and things just sort of go from bad to worse pretty quickly. And so he's not only is Garrett have himself to worry about, he has his whole family there, and he's even brought with him a young boy from Afghanistan that he has in protective custody, and the whole job is to keep this kid safe. And very soon he finds out that that's harder than what he thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you said, Garrett's your protagonist, and he's a damn good one. But
Okay,
for me, the heart of Downrange is a series of relationships Garrett has with the supporting characters, each of them, father-son relationship, brother-brother relationship, protector-child, old friends, an old crush. Those relationships drive the plot throughout in many different directions. When you set out to write the novel, was that your starting point, or did you have the plot and then the characters and relationships grow around that?
I think I always had sort of the general idea of what I wanted to do in terms of plotting. But one of the things that I wanted to have a character driven thriller, and to really have people relate to the protagonist. I think I needed relatable problems, because having a cartel wanting to kill you, or terrorists trying to kill you, or whatever it is, isn't relatable for most people.
No.
And although it might be fun and it might be exciting, might be enjoyable, I wanted there to be things going on in Garrett's life that resonates with everyone, so everybody can be. I've been in that situation where I have a sibling that we haven't talked to in years, or there's a parent that they've had these ongoing issues with, and they need to sort of bury the hatchet, or who doesn't have like an old crush from high school that somehow that comes up, and you see this person or whatever, and you have those same awkward feelings that you did when you were 16, or all those kind of things. So I wanted to include those in the book and have it very relatable to people. And so far, I feel like the people that have early readers of the book have really seemed to gravitate towards that, and enjoyed those characters, and enjoyed those situations that everybody seems to go through at some point in life.
Yep, very true. New protagonists or new series, they typically are a culmination of people that the author's known throughout their life or somewhere in their lifetime. So where did the pieces for Garrett Cole come from your life?
So, it's a funny thing. When I first started this project, this was a second book. I got my agent, John Talbot, with a whole other book series that was more CIA related, more, back to my, sort of original, what I knew, the world of intelligence. And it was his suggestion that we switch it. And it was a great call by John, because Garrett was actually a secondary character in my first novel series that I was putting together.
Wow.
And it's kind of funny. So writing Garrett, doing something different than what I actually had done for a living, was very freeing to me. And honestly, I thought, because you can see me, I'm a pretty clean cut guy and everything. And Garrett's sort of, tattoos and tough guy, whatever, with long hair and the big beard. And I thought that I was sort of writing someone who wasn't me, but I think he might have been me, because even my agent at times had said, like, whenever he delivers these lines, he goes, "I can totally see you saying that," and so maybe Garrett's a little bit of my alter ego, but here's where I think Garrett works, because whether this is right or wrong, I think I'm always the straight man in every situation, if you know what I mean. Like, everybody else is crazy but me, and I'm always going through these situations. I know everybody thinks they're the normal one, right?
Sure.
And that's probably the definition.
Every show.
Yeah. That's probably the definition of being crazy, when everybody else is crazy but you. But so for Garrett, you see these situations. It starts out with the CIA, then it gets to his own family, then it gets into this, like, loves, old crush. And I mean, he's always the guy that somehow gets put in these bad situations. And I kind of feel like I'm always that person. Again, I know that that's probably not the case, but so I think a lot of me sort of comes out in Garrett, even though we don't exactly look alike. And I grew up on a ranch, and farm and ranch in Texas, and so we had that sort of common background. And I think sort of an easygoing. We both had that sort of easygoing nature. So yeah, I guess there's a lot of Garrett Cole, and that of me that comes out in him and his voice. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's probably other people that come into play. But the
way he looks as people you knew in your former life.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, he definitely looks the part of someone that needs to fit in and into that crazy DEA undercover world.
So the story begins in Afghanistan, like you said, and then it quickly moves to West Texas. And although they're thousands of miles apart, I'm curious, as you wrote the story, whether you surprise yourself with how similar those two places are.
They're oddly similar. And when I started going up to Canadian Texas, when I was working in oil and gas, I quickly noticed how oddly sort of similar, it was to Afghanistan in the landscape. And a lot of people don't know this, but there's a really specialized sniper training program up outside of Canadian Texas. And so I started, it was kind of funny because, I talked to some of those guys, and they're like, yeah, I mean, oddly enough, because we would get up on these plateaus and they could shoot these long distance, kind of make these shots like they would make over there. So there was really oddly some similarities to there.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
Well, there's zero doubt that Cole is a lethal human being when the circumstances call for it, but his actions in downrange are driven pretty much by his heart and his love and compassion for other people, whether it be the boy or his family. Like physicians, operators kind of have to develop a cold detachment in order to do their job effectively.
Right.
But as someone who's been in the field at various points of your career, where is that line between cold detachment and the emotional aspect? And how do you find it? How are you sure to find it? And you can answer that both from a fictional and a real standpoint, if you'd like.
Yeah. That's a good question. And I don't know. I think probably for everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. For me, I find it kind of hard to detach from things that are going on and from people that are involved. And I think it's just a personality thing. At the end of the day, whether you're working in intelligence or law enforcement, you have a job to do, and you just have to do it. And you take an oath to do that job, and sometimes you have to make decisions that are hard, that are for the good of the country or the security of the country, that might not be the best for an individual or something like that. But Garrett struggles with that, and you see that in his book. And I probably the same struggles that I had, working the CIA. You realize people's lives are involved here. People can be hurt by what's happening or what's going on. And so I don't know if there is like a right answer, or if there's a definite answer. It's just more of it's kind of like a case by case basis of every situation. It's hard to say, but yeah, that there is a strange, that's a strange world where you have this mission to do, but people's lives are affected by it.
Well, you started to mention kind of how this book came about with your agent saying, hey, maybe we should work in a little bit different direction here. So what was the genesis for this, where it was placed, and what the storyline, the overarching storyline, where did this come from? Was it some cumulative experiences in real life? Was it a something you saw on TV, a news article? Where did this all come from?
So when I was working as a landman, and so I would go on these big. So my job, and maybe I'll explain a little bit what an oil and gas landman is for those who don't know. But you're basically the guys who go out and make the deals with people, whether it's on mineral rights or surface rights, because those. So you're making the oil and gas deal, but also those rigs have to come in, and you have to build roads and do all those kind of things that are pretty and they can really disrupt people's lives and operations. So because I'd worked in farming and ranching and grown up with that, and we had oil and gas on our place, I kind of knew that world. And so I was sort of a natural fit to go out there and meet with people and be like, okay, this is going to disrupt your world here, but let's do it with the least consequences as possible, and let me be your guy when something goes wrong. Let me come on. I'll be the one to handle it. Don't worry. And so I made some really good relationships with people out there in these ranches. And so I started to learn and grow and learn about these people and learn about the history up here. And the Texas High Plains is so different than where I grew up in Central Texas, even though it was both in agriculture. It's so different and so vast up here. It's just absolutely amazing. And I would get out there on these ranches some days and drive for hours without even seeing anyone. And it's like the mind can't even comprehend or how far you can see. You can literally see as far as the horizon will go in some places, because it's that flat, and you might get up on the Cap Rock here, which is like a kind of a large plateau, and you can just see for, I don't even know how far, but I guess the point being is that as I was going around meeting with people, visiting with people, I started hearing these stories, and they reminded me of stories that I heard growing up when I was a kid, about drug, no place is without has not been touched by drugs, drug trafficking, and the crime associated with drugs. I started hearing these stories as I was going around about weird things happening, and what's happening, even with like wealthier families, kids getting into drugs and meth and all this stuff, and then the traffickers, money laundering, all the things that were going on. And as a kid, I remember hearing these stories, even in my own community, about I think it was maybe the Juarez cartel. Anyhow, it was one of the cartel. Matamoros cartel had gotten involved with some people, and I remember them hearing about planes flying over and dropping cocaine, and these cowboys would ride out on their horses and pick up the cocaine and like ride it back to wherever it needed to go. And the imagery, right? As a writer, you hear something like that, and you're like, I want to tell a story like that. Right. And so, and then of course, I'd worked. Towards the end of my intelligence career, I was working counter narcotics, in Latin America, doing that stuff with the military. And so I had the 30,000 foot view of like what the cartels were doing, their trafficking operations, how they worked, money laundering. And then on the ground level, I was meeting with people and hearing these stories, and, meeting with law enforcement and all these things that were actually going on. And hearing about the dangers of what was going on. Well, I just put those worlds together from what I was learning in oil and gas, from on the ground experience, what I'd known, working in intelligence, working counter narcotics, and just put it all together. And even, like I said, even things from childhood and just research I'd done. That's kind of how the story came together.
It's almost like you couldn't not write the story. It was just there, just right. And
it was there, and I've always been interested in the counter narcotic stuff. I think it's fascinating, and it's something that's not going away, and will probably get worse. And so it affects people's lives. Again, you could talk about a terrorist situation. Well, 9/11, it really affected people in Washington D.C. and New York, and it wasn't that it doesn't affect all of us, but drugs, everybody knows someone who's been addicted to drugs or hurt by drugs, or and then of course in Amarillo where we are, we're at the I-27 I-40 interchange, and there's a lot of drugs passing through here, and I've heard from law enforcement, they said you'd be horrified if you knew who was driving beside you. Sometimes people that would just kill you as soon look at you, and so it's a real danger, and I think we're all exposed to that, whereas terrorism, things like that, not to say that it's not a genuine threat, but I don't think it's something that's in our faces every day.
Yeah.
So we've talked to a bunch of authors who have an intelligence background or a law enforcement background, and although they write fiction like you, they've had to have their work reviewed by the government agencies that they previously worked for. So what was it like for you to run through that gauntlet, considering your background?
It was a learning experience. The first time I went through it, I had quite a few. I had quite a few redactions, which Jack Carr has those, and he just leaves them right in, and that's fine. I think that's fine. But I did everything and scrubbed everything, and just so anybody knows, it wasn't anything really juicy. It was stuff that I was shocked that they would consider classified, but that's okay. It's there. I agreed when I took that job to have things reviewed, and so I'm very diligent about having it reviewed. So it's really not a cumbersome process, honestly. I send it in to an email, that I don't know who these people are. It's like some fake name that comes back, and says like, we've reviewed this, or you need to change this, or you need to do whatever. But I've kind of learned what can go in and what can't. And so now I think my second book in the series just came back and no problems. And so, it's really not that bad, honestly. You just kind of got to know what you can say and what you can't. And I'm a patriot. I never want to do anything that would put our country in danger or reveal any tradecraft or anything like that.
Do you ever want to like ask, like in a response email, like, well, did you like it?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to be like, what do you think? Was this, from, and honestly, I don't know, did they really read it, or are they just like doing a word search? I don't know.
Probably a word search. Yeah,
I'm guessing so, but yeah, you like secretly as a writer, you're hoping somebody be like, hey, off the record, that was awesome. Like everybody's gonna love this. But they haven't done that yet.
See, that would be really cool.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Well, sticking with your former profession, you no doubt had to write reams of intelligence assessments, analysis, after action reports, whatever. Yeah. How did that writing experience assist you in your fiction writing? And were there any tendencies born of that you had to kind of overcome or subdue?
So it's funny you bring that up, because I had that question the other day, and so I can't remember, it was an interview, and I said, honestly, intelligence reports, whether the cables or anything, I said they're honestly pretty boring, because you're trying to put this like a lot of information in a very succinct way. And so they're not flashy, they're not fun to read. They're just like data, there's data and there's analysis depending on what you're doing. And so for me, that was kind of, I said, I've tried not to do that when I can. But then I was in another interview, and somebody goes, man, I really see how your writing reports really came out strong in the book. I was like, oh no. I was like, I hope in a good way. And he's like, no, it was like really cool. Like the way you describe stuff almost sound like I was reading like a CIA report or something. I was like, okay, well, if it worked for you, but all that stuff, it can be sort of boring. Subject matter is interesting, but just it's not presented in a way that's like, if you're presenting for a policymaker or the warfighter, it's not like, here's this cliffhanger, turn the page. So like, see who blew up the building. It's like, no, it's just like bottom line up front, and here's the details if you want it.
I found I had to retrain my brain.
Yeah,
spending like 20 years writing, like investigative reports. Yeah, and it's completely different than writing fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different process. It's a different process. Everything's a different, writing. Mm-hmm. I've learned so much as a writer. People think, if you're writing fiction, like, oh, so it must just come natural to you. Well, no, it doesn't. No. It comes from a lot of beatings. From having so I was telling someone earlier, I have mentors. 2 New York Times bestselling romance writers have been in my critique group for the past couple of years, and my mentors. And so I really try to write close point of view. So I write third person, but I try to write you know, where it feels like first person for each point of view that I get into. And so when I jump, you know, if I was, you know, venturing out a close point of view, I mean, these two ladies were like those nuns with the ruler, like, nope, you're getting out of there, you know? And I'm glad they did that, because I think that's been part of the success, or, you know, of people that have enjoyed the book. You know, I think that helps people. I never want to take people out of the scene for even a second. So even when I do like history, you'll see I put like little like tidbits, but I never want that narrator voice coming in. I always want it to be, you're in that person's head, you're thinking what they're thinking, and it's moving quick, you know?
Right. Well, speaking of which, all writers are readers, right? So before you started down this path, who were your fictional influences growing up?
You know, probably given my age, and this is going to make total sense for people who read the story, but I had two, you know, Tom Clancy, not surprisingly, as a, you know, thriller writer, and then Larry McMurtry as the, you know, Western writer. Those were two of my favorites growing up, and two big influences. So if you look at Downrange, it's kind of like put those two stories together. You know, you got kind of a modern Western with the thriller, you know, and so those were two big influences. My all-time favorite thriller novel was The Charm School by Nilsen DeMille.
Who doesn't like that?
Great novel.
That book, that's the definition of a good thriller, and I'll be chasing that book for the rest of my life. Trying to write that book, because it was just so good. And, you know, read it multiple times, but I remember the first time I read it, I remember just, I don't even know how to describe it. Just, you know, when they talk about edge of your seat suspense, that was it for me. And I won't even talk about it, because I don't want, you know, somebody want, go read it. It's just that good. And I just remember being in that moment, and I always thought, man, if I could ever take readers to that moment, I'll know I've achieved something.
Yeah.
Well, how much of an influence was Walker, Texas Ranger, or Lone Wolf McQuade?
You know, I've never seen an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh man,
I don't think I have either. But Lone Wolf McQuade is actually a Chuck Norris.
Love me some Lone Wolf McQuade. Yeah,
that's the one where he's under the ground with the.
Oh, I mean,
yeah, he pours the beer on himself.
Nitrates out.
Truck pops out. Him and David Carradine, yes.
Yeah, if it gets any better than that, I don't know how.
By the way, those are my impressions of Texas and Texans. That's how I, you know, being from the Northeast, like, wow, man, that's crazy.
You think everybody's a badass like Flo?
Yeah, it's true. No, it is true.
We'll take your word for it.
Yeah, so no, it's you know, so incidentally, Chuck Norris has a ranch right outside of my hometown of Navasota, where I grew up, and he was at my high school graduation. He wasn't there for me, but he had a niece.
Who cares?
Yeah, but
you tell that story.
Was at my high school graduation. Yeah,
just kicked every graduate in the face as they came off the stage.
Yeah, like you get your diploma and you get a kick in the stomach from.
There's a book right there, right? Terrorist attack on your high school graduation with Chuck Norris in the audience. Come on, man.
Yeah,
dude, you got to send your book to him. By the way, I think he would enjoy this one.
Yeah,
he probably would. He probably would like it. So maybe I will. And you know, the fact that I'm from there, maybe hometown
for sure
does good or something.
Sure,
right? So
for sure.
But yeah, Lone Wolf McQuade, you can't beat that.
Hey Taylor, you know, I'd imagine you have like dozens of real life stories to help shape your works of fiction. So like, why Downrange? Why that story? What message or feeling were you hoping to express with this story specifically?
I don't really know. You know, when you started that, you kind of went a different way with that question. So I'll answer the question that I decided to answer in my head before you finished or whatever. And then maybe in the meantime,
that's your prerogative.
Yeah, right. Don't listen to him anyway.
I'm just here drinking booze.
We'll overdub his question later. It'll look like one of those old Japanese movies.
Well, so you know what something that you said, it sparked this thing. So one thing that's kind of interesting. It was fun to me to tell the story of a DEA guy involved with the CIA, because I have a couple of stories, and you know, when I was there, before I even went, I remember talking to an FBI agent that had retired, and and this was when I was getting out of graduate school, because I was interested in FBI, CIA, anything that, people might be that studied international relations and economics like I did. And he said, I view, the FBI is always kind of the guys in the white hats, and the CIA is the guys in the black hats. And that was before, I even did any of that. And I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting way that they look at it. And I remember years later, was in this meeting, and it was kind of a community. I mean, there might have been a Secret Service. I can't remember. It was a bunch of different people getting together, and the CIA hosted it. And I remember this FBI special agent standing up. He goes, "I don't understand what you guys do." And it wasn't that he didn't understand, that we collect intelligence and all this. He didn't understand our mentality. And he said, our thing is about, relationships and all that.
Wait, the FBI guy said that? No, he didn't.
Yeah.
It's about relationships.
Yeah.
Right,
well, like building relationships with partners, and for us, it's a whole different, our when you're in the agency, I mean, your job is to still secrets, and it's just a whole different. It's not that we don't have good partnerships and all that, but it's just, there's law enforcement, there's intelligence world, and it's just two different kind of things. It just really is. And so I kind of I put Garrett Cole into that world of like a law enforcement officer working in the intelligence world. And you might remember that when he first gets involved in it, is like, I don't trust these people,
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to show that. I kind of wanted to tell that story of what it would be like to be on the outside, looking into the intelligence world. And because the intelligence world is so connected to, the National Security Council and things that are going on in the policy world. And it's just a different ball game. And my wife, she always gets so mad. I don't know if you guys have watched any of the Narcos on Netflix. Yeah, it's great. But my wife always gets so mad at the CIA guy. The guy that always comes in and like ruins everything.
Ruins it.
Yeah. And then she's like, oh, see, that's why I hate the CIA. Like, and so I had to go through this whole story about, well, you got to understand the 80s. Like, you have to understand the Cold War, and cocaine was not that big a deal compared to communism, that was going to take over everything.
That's right.
And so there's a whole agenda going on. Do we want people doing cocaine? No. But do we want to like all become communists? No, we didn't want that even worse. So pick your. So it's kind of that world. And I think in the book I kind of wanted to tell that story of what it's like to be from the outside looking in and not being able to trust these guys. Although I think in the end the CIA is a source of good, not evil. I like to think that they're wearing the white hat and not the black hat, but I don't know.
Well, I just want to say that was a perfect answer to my question.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
So he wants us to leave his voice in there.
Together. That's what I used to do too. And when I was,
I'm going to highlight the part about Chris's response to the FBI to Don Bentley and make sure that he sees that.
Oh, he knows it.
He knows it.
Dude, every time the FBI walked into the room, everyone went, ugh. They're coming to take my case.
I had lunch with Don Bentley last two Sundays ago.
Oh, we're sorry.
Feel sorry for you.
And this conversation came up, and it was him, and it was another guy that's a friend of mine. He's a former Ranger Regiment guy, and he's a screenwriter. And so we were having lunch in Austin, and they all just started beating the crap out of me over the whole CIA thing, and y'all aren't as good as you think you are, and all this stuff. And
that sounds typical.
And we got in this argument, kind of a fun argument. He said, my Ranger friend, he said, "Man, you're turning red." And I was like, "It's hot out here. It's Texas, man. So like, leave me alone." I was mad though.
I've got a lot to
I wasn't gonna admit it.
So,
Well, I think we've flustered Don on the show, so
yeah,
we got
he deserves it.
Without even
deserves it.
That's right.
He deserves it. Yeah.
One aspect of the plot that's been pinging around in my head since I read Downrange is the nexus between cartels and larger criminal enterprises and local criminal elements. And I got to thinking, if I wanted to network with any group of people in a legal environment, it would be quite an undertaking. With a lot of false starts, a lot of trial and error, a lot of, hey, do you know anybody that? Yet criminals, and in particular those in the narcotic circles, seem to have no issues connecting with each other. From your experience and your research for the book and everything involved, why is that, or is it just my perception?
Man, I think it's a small underground world, and it's despite the fact that these guys are in this sort of dirty business, and it seems like sort of underhanded. There is a camaraderie of sorts in the criminal world, and people they sort of gravitate to each other, I think. And people talk even in that community. They talk and they know how to put people together.
Yeah.
And I don't really know, because I've never been in that world. So I've never, I mean, directly in the criminal world. So I don't know how to how exactly it goes down. But I do know it's a small world, and people know how to get things done, and they know who to talk to, and things of that nature. And there's always somebody to do a job for the right price. There just is, and that's the reality. And things that we wouldn't do because we don't, for a variety of reasons, morality and the fact that you don't want to go to prison and all that, doesn't always affect everyone the way it would us. And those guys find each other.
Even on a small scale, like I know people who are, I'm not, but they are heavy pot users, and they'll go to some city and they'll be like, half hour after they're there, they're scoring pot, and I'm just like, how do you guys have like some freaking app that like the rest of us don't have?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to see that, and I was fascinated as I read that book and how, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but how the larger criminal enterprise interacts with the local sort of thug contingent.
Well, Sean, money is a huge motivator, man. It gets people to do things and move around.
Sure.
So
it's not so much that, it's just the finding. I mean, this isn't just the only instance. I was thinking about it. I mean, it's true with pedophilia. It's true with things of that nature where those people find each other without, finding somebody who's not them.
Their radar is on. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. So I was doing some research for another project, and I met with these ladies that do sort of outreach for prostitutes and people that are involved in human trafficking. And you want to talk about a fascinating conversation, because I think we all live in a world where we know stuff's going on, but you don't know the extent of it. Yeah, and so this lady, it was these two ladies, and they're just these sweet ladies, and they pulled out this. I was like, well, how do do people drive up and down the roads looking for? I mean, how does it? She's like, oh, there's apps, there's like websites, there's all these different things. And she pulled up like these classifieds. I was like, oh, is it kind of like coded where it's like, hey, looking for entertainment and a dancer? And she's like, no, this is like, I mean, and she showed it to me, and it's like a naked girl with like basically. I mean, it was like, I was like, well, if this is out there, why aren't people shutting it down? They're like, there's so much of it, it's hard to shut down. They say they do, people, there's task force, people that are working on this stuff, but it's like, you mentioned it, when there's money involved, there's going to be people that are going to do those things.
But I mean, look what even happens. Bob Kraft got caught up in one of those things. I mean, law enforcement's trying to stop some of the sex trafficking that's going on, and when big names get involved, with lots of money, look what happens. It goes away.
Yeah, it goes away,
or it becomes a non-story. Well, let's look up, instead of like looking with a microscope at like the smaller criminal element. I kind of want to look at it with a bigger lens, because narcotics and trafficking, it looms large in downrange. And this is where, like, fact in your story, where fact and fiction collide. And we were talking to Brad Thor the other day, and he likes to call it faction, where you don't know where the fact and the fiction, where either one starts or ends.
Right.
So my question to you is when, with the United States military withdrawing now from Afghanistan, what do you think are the ramifications on the supposed war on drugs?
First of all, you didn't point out how brilliant I was to predict this. My novel to come out August 3rd, and then like the summer. I mean, is that amazing? Am I a good intel guy or what?
Perfect.
I'm going to raise a glass to that one.
He did predict it. I just edited it out so he didn't look that smart.
Pure luck. But an intel guy gets it right every now and then, and I got it right on this one. So that was kind of a fun. And we're seeing what's happened in downrange. We're already seeing that the Taliban is moving back in. You're starting to see some chaos. I think, and this isn't anything, what I've seen in open source is that we will probably leave some contingent behind, like we have in downrange, maybe a military intel presence there, because we kind of have to, don't we? I mean, can we really let it get that out of hand again to where it goes back to where it was? And you like to think that, we've been there, 2 decades or whatever, and we would leave this place, self-sufficient. I don't know if we have, and it's not for a lack of trying on both sides, from our side and from the the good people that are in the Afghan government that are trying, but that is a world. I don't even know how to explain that, but yeah, the drug trafficking is still going to be there. And as I point out in the books, that kind of money leads to bad stuff, not just like they're not going out and buying Lamborghinis, maybe they're buying surface to air missiles or whatever. And so we've got to keep an eye on that. And I'm sure we will. But yeah, us pulling out a presence like that, that's a tough one, man. I feel for any leader that has to make that call, because it's not an easy one. We can't stay there forever and ever and ever. That's not a good thing. It's never a good thing to, at some point people kind of want you out of their country, and I get it. We would too. Well, but at the same time, it can't go back to pre 9/11.
I just found it fascinating that some of the guys who were getting deployed there weren't even born when 9/11 happened.
It's mind blowing, isn't it? It's absolutely mind blowing. And so we have to do something, but I have a feeling it's probably going to get worse. I hope it doesn't, but I think it might, at least in some areas. And it all goes back in book 2 that I'm working on. It's all part of that interconnection.
So it gets worse in book 2. It gets worse.
Well, there's still problems. There's problems. There's going to be problems.
Well, that's good, because it'd be boring as hell if there weren't problems.
Sitting on his porch.
Book 2, everything's fine.
Disneyland.
Let's just sit around and whittle for like 3
Book 2, he goes to Disneyland.
A lot of horse riding.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to talk
to you about
romance
novel now.
Yeah, book 2. I got a whole new problem set you guys aren't even going to believe. And it goes back to reality. You're not going to believe it, but it goes back to a reality that I've experienced here in the Texas Panhandle. But get ready. Get ready. If you like book 1, you're going to love book 2.
Nice. I love the book 1. So I'm gonna really love
it. Well, speaking of book 1, let's talk about your cover for a second.
Yeah.
So Mark Graney is a good friend of ours.
Yeah.
And he's been on the show a number of times.
Yeah.
What's it like as a debut author staring at someone of his caliber and his level of success in this genre with his splash across your cover? What does that feel like as somebody come out with book 1?
It's completely surreal. It's absolutely surreal. Yeah, because you look at these guys, and you really when you're trying to do what we're doing, your debut author, and you look at the guys that were kind of like your heroes, and their name is on your book.
I know.
That's pretty cool. It's about as cool as it gets. And beyond that, some of these guys I've become friends with. So it's not just like this, like, hey, can I shake your hand kind of a deal. It's like, hey, let's email, let's talk, let's meet for lunch or do whatever. And so that's really cool. It's great. It's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
For those that don't know what he said, it says an intense, authentic, and spellbinding powerhouse. Mark Graney, author of Relentless, and there's some more inside from Mark Graney and other people.
Yeah.
No, I'm super. I couldn't be more grateful for those guys who took time. As a writer, I know I literally have zero time to do anything else now, and the book's not even out yet. But I'm already on that. I'm on that like hamster wheel, and so the fact that those guys took time out to read the book means a lot. I'm just blown away by it, and I think it's really cool.
Taylor, do you have 2 books? So one's already gone through review. The second one's already gone through the review with CIA, but so does that mean you're working on the third one?
So third book, I'll start on that one pretty soon. I have I think up to 5 books outlined. Was it 5? Yeah, 5 books in the series outlined. And so, yeah, I'll need to start working on book 3 pretty soon. Yeah, within the next like month or so. If I can get this book out, there's a lot of, obviously marketing, publicity, and all that stuff goes on. It's like a full-time job now. And so I'm doing that, and I've got other projects going on, but yeah, so yeah, I'll need to start working on that pretty soon.
You got to start your medication for your imposter syndrome feelings now.
Well,
Mike, right?
Yeah. Mike mentioned the cover, but also in the acknowledgments, you mentioned how important Thriller Fest was to your writing journey, and connections and all that stuff. Well, it's 3 guys who actually met at Thriller Fest in 2019. We'd love to hear more about that. How did Thriller Fest impact your whole process?
So I can't say enough good things about Thriller Fest. And if anybody's out there listening and you want to be a thriller writer, I don't think it's like a nice thing to do. I think it's like something you have to do. You got to you just got to get there, because let me tell you, the first time I went, I did get my agent. I didn't get him at John Talbot at Pitch Fest. We'd kind of had this ongoing thing going, but I met him there, and I was signed, if you will, at Thriller Fest. But before I went to Thriller Fest, I went to, is it Craft Fest? I can't remember the name of it now. Yep. But I learned so much from those guys that even after I got my agent, I was like, nope, I learned so much from this. I want to go back and rewrite the book based on what I learned at Craft Fest. And then just the people that I met, it's like, because at Craft Fest, it's mostly people like you. If you don't have an agent, you haven't been published, they're people trying to get there. And so you have this camaraderie with those people that's just amazing. And people that I keep up with today from other countries. And so you've got that. And then it's just such a good networking place. You learn so much. You meet such neat people. I mean, even at the last one, I mean, at that point I had my agent. We were kind of in the process of pitching the book, and things were looking kind of promising. But just being there, I remember like one night I got to just hang out with J.D. Barker, and I'd learned a lot from J.D. Barker just reading his books. Yeah. And he's a great thriller writer. He doesn't really write, like the military thriller kind of stuff we're doing, but he is an awesome writer. And I learned so much. And it wasn't like with J.D. Barker, I was kind of like, nervous to meet him. And we hung out for probably a couple of hours, and he was just cool and nice. And but yeah, it's funny, so like I remember, just being a fan. I mean, the first time I met Jack Carr, I got him to sign my book, and I looked down and my hand was shaking. I was so embarrassed. I was like, man, you're in the CIA, man, buck up. These guys are like heroes. And I was just embarrassed to see my hand was shaking as I but it is what it is. And so, maybe somebody else will be like that with me one day. And if you are, you don't have to be, because I'm a normal guy and just doing this thing.
Well, you are now, but when the movies are made, you're going to be kind of.
Then I'll be a jerk. Yeah.
Don't talk to them.
The crew reviews.
I think you hit the nail on the head. We were overwhelmed by, and I'm speaking for all of us because we've had this discussion many times. We were overwhelmed by the sense of community there. That wasn't just the big author to the big author. It was the big author to the aspiring author to the new author to everybody in between. I never felt more like I was with my people than I did at Thriller Fest. And that includes sports and all the things that I've done before that. I mean, I just felt like I'm with a bunch of people who are all pushing towards the same goal, and they're happy to see everybody next to them achieve that goal instead of like begrudging them their success.
Right.
You said you all right. You hit the nail on the head so much with everything you just said, and you said be with my people, and that's exactly how I felt, and that's exactly how I describe it. I've never felt more comfortable with people in my life than I had at Thriller Fest, and you need that camaraderie, because you need it when you're trying to get there, because you need to know everybody else who's had the same rejections and the fears and all that. And then when you get a little bit further, there's gonna be another level of people helping you out. Yeah. And that's what I experienced. Like, nobody's like too good to talk to anyone that I've encountered. Everybody was kind and nice and welcoming, and No, it's just it's a great organization, and I can't wait till we all meet in person again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're going to be seeing you at BoucherCon, so
yeah, we'll see you at BoucherCon.
We'll see you at BoucherCon New Orleans.
Yeah.
Another great
organization. That'll be fun. Yeah. I haven't been to BoucherCon yet, so this will be.
We haven't either, but tremendous organization. So
yeah. I've heard everybody that I've talked to that are writers that go just love it, and so I'm excited about that too.
Nice.
Well, you should be excited because you've lived through the main portion of the crew reviews. You've lived through
Raise the glass.
Okay.
Wow.
Good.
Interview. Taylor Moore went downrange with the crew reviews and survived.
I did survive. Yeah.
Inside joke. So now you've reached the lightning round, and as we always say, we didn't put a lot. We didn't put a lot of thought into the question, so you don't need to put a lot of thought into your answers during this portion.
Yeah.
Make that a little fun.
Fair enough.
I will go first since I'm the host. And since you're from West Texas, or live in West Texas, I should say, the most influential actor from West Texas from this group of actors.
Okay.
Powers Booth, who besides Red Dawn gets a lot of points just for saying bye in Tombstone. Woody Harrelson, who's very diverse actor. Tommy Lee Jones.
Okay.
Needs no introduction. And Lisa Whelchel, who played Blair from Facts of Life.
I did love the Facts of Life, and Blair was always my favorite.
Everybody.
But is she really from West Texas? That's my question.
Really?
Is she really?
West Texas.
All right. Well, I'm going to find her. We'll see about that. I'll go with those are all everybody's great, but Powers Booth do you get cooler than that? Get cooler than that?
Zero cooler than that.
I mean, in Tombstone, he makes you love the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And he's had some other really good roles. He's done some like special operations stuff too, right?
Yeah. And he's the pilot that gets shot down in Red Dawn. Who helps?
I got 4 of them.
All that hate's gonna burn you up.
Burn you up. Yeah. He's
too cool.
He's got probably some of the most memorable lines in proportion to his screen time.
Probably so.
Yeah. So I think I think he's that good. I have to go with him. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So
like you even more now, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned in interviews, including with us, that where you live is kind of like stepping back in time to the Old West.
Yeah.
So if you could go back in time, which Old West personality would you most like to hang with for a week?
Man, that's a good question. Charles Goodnight would be hard to pass up because this guy did a little bit of everything. He was like a Texas Ranger, cattle drive, really kind of a founder of our state in some ways. Maybe Charles Goodnight. And to just to do those cattle drives. He's sort of the inspiration for Lonesome Dove. Which is my all-time favorite novel. So I'd have to be Charles Goodnight. Yeah. Somebody, I was doing an interview the other day, and they said they hadn't read Lonesome Dove. I said, well, you got to put it on your list. I says, it's not like, in my opinion, it's a good book. It's a Pulitzer Prize winning novel. But it was a huge inspiration for me as a writer. I think it's hands down the best book I've ever read. Absolutely.
It's called required reading. That's like seeing The Godfather as a movie. And
no, absolutely.
All right. So you mentioned earlier you're from Navasota, which, by the way, makes me feel like they couldn't decide on what the hell to name the place, and they just packed. I did read that it's from an Indian word that means muddy city or something.
I've heard a million stories. It's
like being a Hoosier. Everybody has many different reasons for what a Hoosier is.
Yeah.
Well, where I know, and you said this earlier, that Chuck Norris has a ranch.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to preface it with that. Who is the most intimidating man associated with Navasota? And I'm going to give you 3 choices. Okay. Chuck Norris, famed lawman Frank Hamer, who brought down Bonnie and Clyde.
You're going to have to do good, dude, because I was going to say that. So you're going to have to do good and go for it.
Or Robert Reed, AKA Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch. He's awesome.
What?
Yep.
So
Minnesota.
Chuck Norris, of course, is a legend, but but Frank Hamer, dude, he is so cool. If there's anyone out there, I mean, he's the guy that, you know, killed Bonnie and Clyde, and I mean, but that's not all. I mean, this guy lived many lives in one. And there's a lot of good books on Frank Hamer. If anybody's ever looking for a good book on a, you know, Texas Ranger, good Texas lawman, read about Frank Hamer. And
Well,
yeah, I got to go with Frank.
I read a little bit, and in 1908, in your birth town, there was like 100 deaths per year shooting in the streets and such like that. Yeah. And Frank Hamer came in 1908, and by 1911, there was almost no crime in the downtown.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure everything he did was not what you would do now, but yeah, he got that down in order.
But it was effective.
It was effective. It was effective. Yeah.
Results matter.
He got results. He did. Yeah. So yeah, no, he's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
All right. Am I up?
Yes,
here I go. All right. Lone Star Beer wants to know if Shinerbach is really your favorite and you're just blaming Garrett Cole.
I like both. I like Lone Star and I like Shiner. Shiner, man, how do I put this? Shiner was kind of like a beer of my generation, if you know what I mean. Like we love Shiner. I still get Shiner. I still get Lone Star too, but
I think that's a requirement though, isn't it?
Yeah. So I can't really pick. Shiner happens to be so Shiner is Garrett's beer, and Bridger, his brother, he's the Lone Star guy. So can we kind of split the difference?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. You are 6th generation Texan. So tell me, any family at the Alamo?
Not at the Alamo, but at the Battle of San Jacinto. My name is Robert Taylor Moore, and the original Robert Moore that came here fought at the Battle of San Jacinto after the Alamo. So yeah, my family's been here a while, and
he only wins. You guys don't lose. You just win. Right?
Yeah, just All right.
Yeah, so my Texas roots run deep.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Where have you been in the world that most closely resembles the Texas landscape where you're from?
That's a good question. Northern Argentina. Gosh, if you go too far north, it gets a little deserty from, you know, compared to where I'm from. But if I had to compare, you know, like I've spent some time on a tobacco plantation and cattle ranch in Salta, Argentina. And that was the closest place. I could have moved there and really not skipped a beat. It was so much like where I grew up, just the people. It looked a little bit different, but it was just so similar, you know, very agrarian, very rural type place with just similar type people. And it just had the feel of where I grew up in Texas. So kind of that northern part of Argentina.
Never would have guessed that ever.
Yeah,
There's
right.
A story there, like, dude, how'd you end up there? But
I backpacked around South America.
We'll talk offline.
Backpacked and got a job.
I went to Antarctica. Yeah, I took a Russian research vessel to Antarctica.
That's my first question for you, because I'm up.
Okay.
How many times did you throw up as you sailed through the Drake Passage aboard a Russian icebreaker?
Let me tell you, I didn't throw up any, but I was so terrified. Everybody told me how horrible it was. I started taking Dramamine, I think the day before I got on the boat, just so it'd be in my system, ingrained in my, I was just running through my bloodstream. But it was absolutely, that Drake Passage was absolutely insane. Really? And half the boat was in bed with seasickness for the first day. Jeez. And my poor roommate, he was like in bad shape. But it's so wild. You have to actually, I remember wedging myself when I'm trying to sleep at night, wedging myself into a corner, because if not, you just roll right out of bed. it was just, you can't even imagine how crazy it is.
So does that mean when you go to the bathroom, you're always sitting?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just went off the side. I can't remember. It was kind of a party boat too. There was just people from all over the world that are on this thing.
That's awesome.
We literally partied all night long one night, and the sun never went down. That was what was crazy.
Oh man, it's like Vegas.
Yeah, awesome. It was weird, but I mean, you're outside. It just like it gets Vegas. Kind of dark, but not dark, and so yeah, it was a wild scene.
That means it's time for drinking. All right, so. Texans are proud of being from Texas, right?
Right.
So, but what's the single worst thing about Texas?
The humidity. Yeah, the humidity is just awful, and unfortunately, I live in the high plains now, and so the humidity isn't as bad. But growing up where I did, Navasota, it's just hot and humid, man. And so in the summers, working on a ranch, farming ranch, I would get out there, and that was my summer, and you'd go out and fix fence or do whatever. And I remember like looking at the truck and. It said like 115 on the deal, and that's what hotter than it was. But just baking on there, and you get out, and it's like stepping into a sauna. That's also over 100 degrees, and you just immediately just start sweating. And heat and humidity, and then if you throw some mosquitoes in there, that's that's a killer, man.
And
it's a killer.
Well, that's what made Robert Reed so tough. Mike Brady.
I spent some time down in.
Funny you threw that.
Waco.
He was from Navas, or there was something about that, right? I've asked people about that, and
he wasn't born there, but he grew up there.
It's so weird.
I don't know if that's true. I think that's a different one. I don't know. I check your facts, man. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's probably true. Probably true. I did read that a long time ago. It's funny.
All right, here is my last question. I do not think you're going to get this right. You gave a perfect answer before. I do not think you'll give a perfect answer now.
Okay.
So, if you took every single human being in the world and transported them to Texas, how much living space would each person have in square footage?
In square footage, I don't know. 200 square feet. I don't know. I can't even fathom it.
Okay.
What was it?
1,200.
Oh, okay.
7 billion.
That's amazing.
1,200.
Amazing.
Yeah.
1,200. Okay, that's
bigger
pretty.
than my
That
first
is
apartment
amazing.
for sure.
I would have guessed like 50. So that's
Great.
That's how big Texas is. Oof.
Well, if you come out to the Texas Panhandle, the High Plains where I am, there's a lot of space, man. There's as far as the eye can see there's space, and it's honestly it's mind-boggling. Again, having grown up in Texas, I literally there were times when I would drive up to this town called Perryton, and I would pull over my truck and just stare out at nothing in some ways. Like you're looking at nothing. It's just beyond insane because there's just that much flat land and space. So there is a lot of land. I will say that.
Well, with enough Californians coming in, that'll change pretty soon.
Well, you have internet, so that's a
that's something. That is something. We do have that. That is good.
Well, we'll come out for your next book. We'll do a cruise on location in West Texas.
Oh, it's gonna be
absolutely.
Like
yeah, absolutely. There's a really fun thing that they might have seen on my social media out at Mendota Ranch. There's this thing called Rotor Recoil where you can fly in a helicopter and shoot AR-15s out at targets, and it's like the most fun you'll ever have in your entire life.
That sounds perfect.
And and so it's a hoot. So if you come out here, we'll take a trip up to Canada.
Yeah. I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
Well, I will drink to you surviving not only the main portion but the lightning round.
Okay.
Your time as an analyst and an operative prepared you well, and
that's right.
You were able to come through unscathed. The reader, however, will not come through unscathed. Downrange is a fantastic book. It's a thrill ride, and I know that's a cliche, but it really is. But it's got a huge heart in the middle of it, which is what separates it from your average thriller, let alone your average debut thriller. Fantastic job. Can't wait to read book 2, and we appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I'll be happy to come back on anytime.
Salud.
We'll see you in New Orleans.
All right, see you in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank Taylor Moore for coming on the show. He is not just the normal debut author, and this is not just a normal debut author's book.
That's right.
Taylor had a great career as a CIA agent, both intelligence and operations. And this book shows an authentic voice.
Yes.
Someone who's been there and done that. Pick this up. Join us every freaking Monday. Raise a glass.
Seems angry.
All right.
Maybe because the show's over. Taylor Moore, Downrange. Mm. Mm.
I have to pee first. Sorry.
Hurry up, I want to go
Don't
eat my
leave,
burned
though.
food.
Just go right there.
I'm gonna go eat my burned food.
You
Come
just
on.
go right there.
Hey, I'm Taylor Moore, and you should be watching the crew.
Right.
Hey, I'm Taylor Moore, and you should be watching the crew reviews.
Let's try that one more time.
Okay. Hey, I'm Taylor Moore, and you should be watching the crew. Let me get more.
Here we are. This is the outro for Taylor Moore. And oh, you can't see it because I'm holding up the book. And it's on Sean. I was trying to do like a whole cover reveal, and it's like, nah. Take two.
Take two. He didn't even take one.
No. I'm an integral part of this, goddammit.
And I haven't said a word yet.
This is the outro for Taylor Moore and Downrange. Sean is as green as the walls in his house, maybe even greener.
Damn, that was poor choice.
And here we go. In 3, 2, and game.